Transition. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Little Dicey podcast. My name is Salvatore. This is Matthew. We are your hosts here at A Little Dicey. And this is episode 10.
Hell yeah.
10 of episodes, dude. Not counting the sort of beta episodes that we did before. But, you know, we've
it's a
been
full
going
week's
strong.
worth of episodes.
That's right. You know, sometimes you forget your own lore and you wonder what the fuck your friend is talking about.
Yeah.
And then you suddenly remember that in your own world for no particular reason other than it makes more sense to me.
What was the thing I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, it was like something worked for 7 days and it was like...
And then everyone was like, why?
Yeah. 3/4 of
Yes.
70% of a week.
It sucks because you have to like, so in the homebrew campaign that we play on Wednesday nights here at twitch.tv/LittleDicey DND, if you haven't seen it, watch it Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In that homebrew game, the calendar is 300 days for a year. There are 10 months in the year, and then in every month there are 30 days, and then in every week there are 10 days. So there's 3 weeks in 10 months and 300 days in a year. Makes total sense to me. Round numbers, easy stuff. You don't have to think about it. But the problem is that when you reference things in like other source books or like the DM's guide or like just spells in general, everything is based on, you know, real world weeks. Yeah. So you get stuff like can't be cast for another 7 days. And then if you say that in the game, everyone's like, why? And I'm like, I don't fucking know, dude.
Really arbitrary.
Just got to remember that. Anyway, so this is episode 10. Now, if you haven't been joining us, shame on you, first of all. Second of all, thank you and welcome for being here. We have been doing a ranking the 5th edition classes, S through F tier. We're using our sort of own style of what we'd like to see with the class to give them a specific ranking. And you know what? I'm springing this on Matt because I think it would be interesting to get sort of yours, especially because we've been talking about this for a little bit. And I'm sure you're probably clued in as to what has been announced in the maybe yesterday or the day before. But we are going to continue the ranking the class series. The next voted on class out of the remaining 3 or 4 that we have from our Discord is, I believe, the monk, correct?
That's right.
If I remember correctly. Unfortunately, today we are not going to be ranking the monk because something has happened that I really want to talk about, and I think it's very current. And I'm very interested in it. And if you don't know too much about it, I think I would love to get your initial reactions. Okay. And I have everything pulled up here. So, if you're not familiar, recently, there was a whole crazy sort of, it ended up being totally fake, by the way. This whole crazy fake leak, from D&D Beyond that happened, where someone had posted this completely photoshopped and fabricated, like, internal screen or whatever, like talking about what they were going to be announcing, which the announcement was supposed to happen yesterday for this thing. The leaked announcement, the fake leak, was saying that they were going to truncate their subscription services down to just free version of D&D Beyond and then D&D Beyond Plus. It was going to be $30 a month, which is insane. And then like the free version was going to be hyper limiting, right? So someone just did this. I don't know if we ever got like a legitimate reason why. I think people were just doing this to troll D&D Beyond or whatever, which is funny, but also it was so whack because like when I saw it, I was like, this is whack. And then other people were like, this is really whack. Yeah. Like our friend Hannah had a visceral reaction to this, which I don't blame her for at all. Like if that were to have been true, that would have been crazy. Yeah. Turns out completely fake. However, there was a real announcement yesterday. And then that was the announcement of 1D&D.
I did see that.
Which is going to be the next iteration of Dungeons & Dragons core rule set. So what everybody plays now, and most people have been playing since the sort of Dungeons & Dragons renaissance of the past, 5 years or so, is Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition.
Right.
Before this was 4th edition, before that 3.5 and so on, whatever. Other people played Pathfinder, a lot of different things. But 5th edition right now is sort of the latest, most current, up-to-date, fully printed edition of Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah. And it's been like 4 or 5 years, something like that?
I think a little longer than that, maybe. I don't. It's over 5 at this point. I do know that.
It's because the last 3 years feel like
the last 3 years could have been. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. But now they've announced that in 2024, the fully revised and like official printing of everything of the new edition, which is called 1 DND,
Yes.
is going to be available. So this is going to happen in 2024. I don't remember off the top of my head if this is going to be early or late. You know, first through fourth quarter. I don't know when it's going to happen, but we do know tentatively in 2 years we will get these. However, they released the alpha-ish version of this in the latest Unearthed Arcana.
Oh, did they?
Yes, so we have access to the Unearthed Arcana 2022, which is essentially, if you're watching this, you're not familiar, Dungeons and Dragons, Wizards of the Coast is the the overarching, excuse me,
The parent company.
the parent company.
Yeah.
And they beta test things. Obviously, you have to in these games as they sort of progress and grow. And the name for essentially the beta testing, it's not software, like the rule set beta testing stuff, is called Unearthed Arcana. It's a very cute thing. It's cool.
Very cool.
If you're familiar, if you really like the Artificer class, that was a part of Unearthed Arcana for a long time. People were playing the class, giving feedback to Wizards of the Coast, saying like, hey, this feels really good. This doesn't really do anything. This is way overpowered, blah, blah, blah.
Basically,
that was fine-tuned.
all the new subclasses and new races. Basically, all of these things go through Unearthed Arcana.
And so
Wizards has taken a very love it or hate it. They've taken a very like sort of survey-based.
Yeah, it's very survey-based.
In general, I think of two approaches: is you take your sort of like experts, and they design what they think is best, and then they sort of sell it to the people. Or they're just sort of like, what do you guys like?
Yeah.
And then you use this kind of survey-based, feedback-based approach, and then you basically ultimately use what tests the best. This is your classic, what do they call it? Not study group, but like test groups or whatever.
Yeah.
Where they'll be like, what do you guys think of the new Cinnamon Toast Crunch? Or whatever, right?
Yes.
Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So they put this out, and it's not only including some... it literally includes everything of, I don't want to say everything, I can't speak for them, but it is extensive.
Okay.
We can't go through all 20 pages right now. Unfortunately, we just don't have enough time to do that, but there are a handful of things that people they have feelings about, then I'm like, relax,
Dude,
and all this stuff.
I haven't seen this, and I always have feelings.
Yeah, of course.
I can't wait to hear it.
So we're just going to talk about the new Unearthed Arcana 2022 today, and then give our initial thoughts about some of these things. Matt, I would love to know your reactions, not strictly, but specifically from a player's perspective.
Yeah.
I'll try to give my best perspective as a dungeon master, and I think that we can hopefully come to a nice little round table, two sides of the same coin discussion, just about like some of these new things that they want to bring to the table, so to speak. So off the bat, one of the things that people are like really sort of invested in are the new critical success rules, critical failure rules, and critical hit rules. So people are very particular about what happens when you roll a 1 or a 20, whether this be in combat or through checks or things like that, of that nature. So in the current rules as written, there is no such thing as a critical success.
Okay.
There is no such thing, I believe, as a critical failure either. That is an entirely homebrew thing that is popularized just because it feels really nice to like maybe not be the best at something, but roll, just be lucky, and you get it, right? That feels good. Generally,
that probably most people don't even know.
People don't know
a
that.
Natural 20 is only a thing on an attack roll.
That is correct.
Otherwise, it's just a 20.
Perfect segue. Speaking of attack rolls,
that's the way it was.
Yes. Speaking of attack rolls, the new critical hit rules in our Unearthed Arcana are, this is just off the top of my head, I can read specifically, but I will just sort of, they essentially, number one, they can only happen using a weapon attack or unarmed attack. So spells can no longer crit.
Okay.
It's not an attack roll anymore. It's specifically a natural 20 on the die with a weapon or just your fists.
Okay.
You no longer there's no like it's simply you roll an extra damage die now, and that is, I don't remember if they're all doubled or that gets doubled, but nothing it can only affect, like smites can't be
it's
critical.
the weapon attack.
It is the weapon
Whether
attack.
it's the unarmed strike or the weapon.
Yeah, sneak attack does not get.
So it's the bludgeoning, striking,
Yep.
piercing.
Yes, it is
just add
that.
an additional die of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. So that is the only thing that is amplified.
Do they also double, or it's just you just add a die?
I will check in on that. I believe you just.
Both.
I don't think it's both.
Yeah, you just add a die.
Yeah, you just add a die.
So it's like brutal critical.
It is essentially just brutal critical.
Works.
Dungeon masters or monsters in general do not critically hit.
Okay.
That is something that it's so simple, and I should have just been doing that forever, because I've been trying to figure out in our games, and you know this because I've changed it up a handful of times. Getting a critical hit in the game right now, if you just double your damage dice, or if you simply just roll an additional dice, can still feel like really bad, because like you can just roll low, right? So you could still like roll to barely hit and then just roll really well and do more damage than a badly rolled crit, which is just like the whole point of a critical hit is to be doing more damage than you usually would. So I've been trying to figure out ways to do that, and then like you kind of have to, you have to go, all right, well, if I'm going to buff the critical hits for the players, then I can't do that the same with the monsters, because I'm going to be critting more often than the players are generally as a dungeon master, because you just simply roll more because you control more of the game. So you have to either nerf that or like use the rules usually, blah, blah, blah. And then sometimes it feels like the players are critting too hard because they have too much access to certain, damage, all this different shit. So like, it's so complicated, and I don't know why I never just thought like, well, I just won't crit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it just never was a thought in my head, because I think it's so ingrained in Dungeons and Dragons that if you roll a natural 20, like something spectacular happens. So it wasn't even in like the realm of thought that I would just simply go, I'm not going to do that.
Do it, right.
And I really like that. I actually really, most people were just like this. It's weird to change it like that, because there are a couple of things people have been bringing up that like, it specifically like neuters like the grave cleric ability of like negating crits and stuff. It's like, all right, that's super situational now. There's like a handful of interactions now that are like weird because of that, which I'm sure, like, I mean, this is literally the first day that they put this shit out for the next 2 years that it's going to be revised. So I'm sure they were like, all right, this sounds like a good idea, let's see what the people think. And now it's like immediately like, oh yeah, we didn't think of that. That's the whole fucking point of Unearthed Arcana.
The whole point of it, right.
So people just need to sort of slow your roll.
Is grave cleric or death cleric the one that's supposed to be DM only?
Death
Cleric.
Yeah, right. Grave is specifically from Xanathar's.
Okay, yeah. I always get those two mixed up.
Yes.
My initial thought is, and people that have been watching this series will know that I'm not always terribly enthusiastic about the choices made by the designers of the game.
That is correct.
I'm
not either.
I think most people will be initially disappointed by this.
Yep.
Because it's fun to roll massive crits.
It's super fun to do that.
The thing is, like what you were saying, Sal, is you can never balance for crits.
No.
And so as a DM, you have to think, well, is it actually good for my encounter if the monster crits?
Yep.
Because it's effectively fucked my careful balancing, which is already so hard to do.
Yeah, it's already very
balance
difficult.
Encounters in a fun way, in an interesting way. You can always just give them 100 million hit points or whatever. But,
yeah.
And for players, what this does is, it takes the, first of all, and Fandom said this immediately in the chat, and it's an excellent point. So much for crit fishing builds.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes the classes and the builds that roll a lot of dice, and therefore benefit the most from the traditional critical hit rules, where you either double the dice damage or you roll double the dice, whatever you end up doing. So I'm thinking, your bards with, your rogues with sneak attack, where you might have been rolling like 6 sneak attack dice. Those would all double before.
That is correct. They won't anymore.
Right. Paladins with
smites. Yep.
Similarly, warlocks with smites.
Yep.
So all of these builds, and like, Indigo in our main campaign has swung some fights because he's rolled, he's crit on a level 3 Chaos Bolt, and he's rolling the 6 dice, and they all double, right?
That's right.
But all of those things are so swingy that they fuck your ability to balance a combat.
Yes.
And so I think players will be disappointed because it really does kind of eliminate crit fishing builds, but it's also just, if you're somebody that loves to play paladin or rogue or spellcasters that actually use attack spells, which there aren't that many of them.
No.
This is gonna be disappointing to you, but I think this is actually beneficial for the good of the game, because in the end, like for a monk or for a regular fighter or whatever that's just attacking, this is really not changing anything, right?
More or
They're
less.
only rolling one die anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unless they're throwing a hex or a hunter's mark or something, right? So, so you have to think. So this basically, it hurts paladins, rogues, warlocks significantly. And again, significantly on crits, which how often do they really happen, right?
Right.
But it hurts blaster mages. It hurts probably like rangers because of hunter's mark.
Barely, literally barely.
By one extra die. I don't think this is a problem.
I don't think it's a problem either. I think it's yes, I completely agree. I don't think that I think it's more important swinging back around to
one other interesting thing I just thought of, sorry.
Yeah. No, it's okay.
Is the I wonder if you're using like a great axe. You know how there's like D12 weapons and then there's 2D6 weapons?
Yes.
I would. It sounds like the 2D6.
Do they add an additional 2d6, or is it just a single?
It sounds like
1d6?
it'd be 1d6.
Yeah.
I think that should be changed to just say you add
The
dice
weapon
equal to the weapon.
Yeah.
Whatever. So
I agree
think
with that,
a
yeah.
2d6 Great Maul or whatever should add another 2d6 on a.
Yes.
That's the only way that makes sense.
So I'll read the exact critical hits excerpt from Unearthed Arcana. So critical hits. Weapons and unarmed strikes have a special feature for player characters. So there's your specifically for player characters. Critical hits. If a player character rolls a 20 for an attack roll with a weapon or an unarmed strike, the attack is also a critical hit, which means it deals extra damage to the target. You roll the damage dice of the weapon or unarmed strike, so there you go, a second time,
That makes sense.
and add the second roll as extra damage to the target. For example, a mace dealing bludgeoning damage equals 1d6 plus your strength modifier. If you score a critical hit with the mace, it instead deals 2d6 plus your strength modifier. If your weapon or unarmed strike has no damage dice, it deals no extra damage on a critical hit. Oh, okay, so then that is just inclusive of the monk class. If you just as a non-monk or a maybe one of the feats gives you like a d4 or something, right?
Yeah.
So if you are not a monk or do not have that feat and you hit someone with an arm strike and you crit, it's not a crit because there's no dice to roll.
Right.
So that it's specifically with dice.
Even in normal, I think that's actually not even a change. It just happens to because if I just punch you for exactly one damage, and
then
it's just one.
It's just one, or like if you're nice, it does two.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Which is like whatever.
Yeah.
So that is specific to be inclusive of unarmed builds, and then obviously the class.
I think so far, I think that's actually probably a good change.
Yeah, I love that. I actually really like that a lot.
You're in the middle of a campaign and you've built a crit fisher, and your DM wants to institute this as playtest material, then maybe I would have a problem. But
how would you feel if we did this on Wednesday?
I would say this. I
want to test this kind of stuff. To be honest with you,
the rest of the stuff,
Yeah.
I would have no problem shifting into one D&D playtest material.
Well, maybe we'll generate some more views too.
Yeah,
like, hey, we're one of the only streams that are actually testing
I
this.
think unless exactly what I just said is if one of us is really like doing something specific and the rules kind of neuter it,
Yeah.
we can find a way to work around it. You know, maybe some behind the scenes tweaking on the character sheet to
Got it.
kind of work around it.
Nice. So I want to read you this other excerpt. This is called the D20 test.
Okay.
So this is from, again, Unearthed Arcana 2022. The term D20 test encompasses the three main D20 rules of the game: ability checks, attack rolls, and saving throws. If something in the game affects D20 tests, it affects all three of those rolls. The DM determines whether a D20 test is warranted in any given circumstances. To be warranted, a D20 test must have a target number no less than 5 and no greater than 30. So now, with the new rule sets, I mean, of course, I could just say, fuck that. But rules is written, as a dungeon master, I should not be setting a DC lower than 5, nor should a DC be higher than 30.
Yeah.
So that is within the context of, is it even possible, right? So obviously that doesn't necessarily mean if you as a character can roll higher than a 30, then anything is possible in that given genre of check, right? So that doesn't mean like, oh, there's like a literal 20-ton boulder here. All right, I want to do a strength check. Technically, rules as written as a DM, my DC for that cannot be higher than 30, right? But we all kind of know that that's impossible. So like, that doesn't mean like, that's just on my jurisdiction to be like, is this a possible thing that a character can do, even with, you know, a strength check of that could exceed a 30, right? So
it's just supporting those basic difficulty DCs, which is like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, ranging from easy, trivial to like Herculean. And yeah, I mean, like you were alluding to, if the DC would be higher than 30, just say no. Because
and if it's DC's less than 5, just say yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just a good rule of thumb. This to me is just like protecting players and DMs from doing shit they shouldn't be doing anyway.
I agree. Now, so here's the thing, getting back to the first part of the whole critical situation.
I do want to say one other thing. I wonder if the way that they worded that, if that means there won't be, that they'll be erratating things that affect some of those, but not all of those. In other words, like Bless, I think works on all 3, but a lot of things only work on 1 or 2 of them. And it's always confusing. Like, can I use guidance on a saving throw? Blah, blah, blah. I wonder if they're going to errata things to just be like, you can use this on a D20 test.
And they just sort of truncate it down to maybe a single spell, or, you know what I mean? That it just like has more access. Or if you want to really just call it like a different thing for a different spell list, that's fine. Like, I mean, if a bard has Blessed, like, maybe it just says like, you know, I don't know, something like Chord or something like that. And it's like, okay, it's just fucking Blessed, but it's a different flavor, which is cool.
I think that's actually a good thing because it's always confusing to remember. I mean, you and I have pretty good mastery of the rules. It's always hard to remember.
I always have to check.
Because it's usually like 2 of the 3. Right?
And it's just like, dude, 2. Like, you know, it's ridiculous.
Bardic Inspiration works on a D20 test. Bless works on a D20. Guidance works on a D20. I think that's actually, and if there's ever really a very specific reason for it to only target like 1 of them, I think that'd be fine. Like just an attack roll, I think would make sense. But if it's 2 of the 3, just make it all 3.
I agree. Fandom had a good question in chat. Do crits retain the auto hit part? Now here's the thing. Off the top of my head, I actually do not know if that is rules as written that a critical hit automatically hits. Most of the time it's going to automatically hit because of the balancing of the nature of ACs in the game, because a lot of times if you're going to hit with something, generally you're not going to have a non-modifier or a negative modifier. So most of the time you're going to have at least +2 to something that you're doing. And then at any given level, AC 22 is very uncommon for an enemy to have higher of anyways, and if an enemy does have higher AC than 22, you're gonna have a higher modifier anyway. So I actually, off the top of my head, do not know if that is like an actual thing right now. I could look into that.
Do you know for sure if
it is an actual thing right now? I will say in the rules as written here, it has no mention of that. It just says that, well, actually, hold on, let me make sure that I am not getting that incorrectly. So critical hits, weapons and arms that have if a player character rolls a 20 for an attack roll, it is also a critical hit. So it's not suggesting that it automatically hits. It's just that if it does hit still, which is way more likely than not, it is also a critical hit. I do not believe a natural 20 is an automatic hit. However, it is considered a critical hit if it does hit. That is my interpretation of it, because it does not mention whether it does or not. And as we all know, if a spell or a feature or a rule does not state something, then it is not true.
99% of the time or more, it's not going to make any difference. But
that is correct.
It's a good question. I actually don't know.
And as a dungeon master, I probably would just, if you are looking to DM or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's an odd thing, like I don't really have a real answer to that. Pick your answer and stick with it. And just as long as you have consistency, then everyone's on the same page, right? Whether or not that's technically a good choice in this realm of like, is that a fun choice for everybody for you to be like, well, does it still hit? Probably not. I would probably just suggest like it hits. Like, I mean, it would be insane if you had like a +4 and you're fighting an enemy that had an AC 25. It's like, even a crit doesn't hit, then you're fucked. It's
I would suggest actually that if you roll a 20 on the die and you still can't hit a thing,
run.
I think that's tough. I think that's tough titties, baby.
I respect that.
It's like, here's the thing. So there's like let's say there's a pixie with haste right in front of you, right?
Yeah,
And
sure.
its AC is like 28.
Yeah.
And I'm not a monk. And I'm just like, I'm gonna punch it. And
Yeah.
roll a 20, and I have 11 strength, right?
Yeah.
I just think I should miss it.
Yeah, I feel like there are
saying?
some things that should just be in the same realm that we were just talking about. There doesn't need to be a fucking DC for things you can't do. Like, if that's just the thing where, like, it's impossible for you to hit this thing, like, then it's fucking impossible for you to hit it. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's in the realm of, like, again, it's kind of like, if you're not able to hit something after critting it, then, like, either you're in the wrong fucking place or you need to figure out what else to do. You know what I mean?
If somebody rolls a natural 20 and misses, that it'll be your table will have more fun laughing at them.
Oh yeah.
Then it would be worth just being like, okay, you do the probably 2 damage you would have done
for
with
sure.
your shitty ass attack.
Yes. Okay, so now finally getting around to the critical stuff for non-attacks.
Yeah.
So now it is rules as written according to Unearthed Arcana that for any of these D20 tests,
Okay, yep.
it is true that rolling a 1, if you roll a 1 on the D20, the D20 test automatically fails.
Okay.
So this is any of the 3,
Yep.
right? Saving throw, ability check, or attack.
Yep.
Regardless of any modifiers to the roll, right? So like, especially now rules is written, this has come up in our game a couple times, where a natural 1 will happen. And generally I like to, I don't want to use the word punish to give the wrong idea. I generally like to flavor natural 1s as something that it's a little bit more difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
Without outright being like, your turn fucking sucks now, and like your subsequent turn is gonna also suck because you got unlucky. I just like to flavor it to where it's like, oh, okay, now you have to maybe do like one small thing on your turn to like, and if you don't remember that, then it's like, oh, you pay attention, you know what I mean? So that's what I like to do. But rules is written, if you roll a nat 1, like this comes up with Garrett's character Kaz a lot,
people
because
with expertise will have like plus 13.
exactly, so you can't really fail.
Whatever.
Right? So, but now you can. I'm interested to know how that works with some of the class features like Jack of all trades and the rogues feature. I can't remember off the top of my head, but
Reliable talent.
Yeah, reliable talent, in which that right now is technically negated. Like you can't fail, or I mean, with certain DCs and stuff like that. Right now, if you roll a 1, it is treated as a 10 if you are if you have reliable talent as a rogue.
I think they both auto fail.
Yeah, I mean, it says regardless of any modifiers, which in my mind that is technically a modifier because you're still modifying the roll.
Jack of all trades is definitely a modifier.
Yeah, Jack of all trades is,
talent
yes.
lets you treat something less than a 10 as if it's set a 10, but I think that still is like a tier under what the die actually says when it comes to this. So the die face is a 1, but you can treat it as a 10. And if the die says 1, then it's an auto fail.
Yeah.
Which, again, if you're going to play with auto fails,
Then I think it should just always auto fail.
Yeah.
Barring, barring halfling luck or whatever.
Yeah, I'm interested to know if that. I'm sure pretty much all of this will go through or many changes for the next 2 years, but those are the things that I'm very interested to know, like the certain interactions that you're going to get with like how certain classes work and stuff, especially with now what are in written criticals.
And I think that's how most people are playing natural 1s right now anyway. On skill checks.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, most people do that anyways.
Yeah.
And then rolling a 20. If you roll a 20 on the D20, the D20 test automatically succeeds.
There you go. So that answers the question.
Regardless of any modifiers to the roll. Okay, so there you go. Then it does automatically succeed. Yeah, I don't. That in the separate thing, which they should have just fucking included it in the critical hit thing. Yeah. Yes, it automatically succeeds. Okay. Regardless of any modifiers. A player character also. So this is an interesting part, which I would like to see them. I'll get there when we get to it. A player character also gains inspiration when rolling the D20, thanks to the remarkable success. Rolling a D20 doesn't bypass limitations on the test, such as a range and line of sight. The 20 bypasses only bonuses and penalties to the roll, which makes sense, but also at the same time, why?
Wait,
I feel like that's super redundant.
So it's. I think what it's trying to say is, like, if a spell says you have to have line of sight, and you're just like, but then DMs don't ask for a roll.
No, DMs would say you can't do this.
You can't do this. Don't roll.
Yeah, that's what. So that feels redundant to say.
Heavy cover is a modifier.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I also do not like my gut. These are all gut reactions, of course. My gut reaction is that I do not like
auto succeeding on nat 20s on skill checks.
Yeah, it's just
Maybe if you have proficiency, then fine.
that's what I like to do. I
Because
don't like.
If I don't know a goddamn thing about religion.
It doesn't make any sense.
30. I should not have a 5% chance of knowing it.
No, and then like justifying that so ridiculous that like justifying that is so ridiculous that to make the justification for you to come to some sort of realization on that check or something, it brings me to the point where I'm like, well, then if I have to justify that you read this somewhere, then why would you even make a check? You would just know the thing.
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
So actually, you know what? I'm going to check myself. If a nat 20 doesn't, if you tell a player to roll the die, and they roll a 20 and they still would fail, then you fucked up by having them roll the die to begin with.
I agree. No, they should not be rolling a die. Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I'm fine with it. But this should say, note, DMs, remember, don't have your players roll dice on things that should not be able to succeed.
There should be many reminders for Dungeon Masters that, hey, you've got a floor and a ceiling. Don't fucking have people roll to try to beat the ceiling. And then also don't punish your players by having them roll for something that they should just know, right?
Yes.
Which is difficult for me sometimes too, because sometimes it's hard to remember, or it's hard to keep in the forefront of your mind, like, oh yeah, you would know that, right?
Yeah.
Which is why I do love the question from players like, would I know this? And then it just forces me to stop for a second. I think specifically about that and I go, knowing the character, right, pretty intimately, as you should as a Dungeon Master, you should know your player characters intimately. You just think about it for a second. How would they know this? You have this comes up with you a lot actually as Kill, right? So a difficulty is building Kill's culture suggests that a lot of knowledge that you have is oral tradition and sort of trial by fire doing specifically in your archipelago, right? And that's wonderful. That's a really cool, awesome backstory. It's a great way to build, it's a great way to world build. That's really cool. Now, the struggle comes when we get to points where it's like, all right, well, now that the campaign is sort of heavily engrossed in a different culture's specificity about like religion and like other things and like governmental structure and just sort of societal structure, when you as Kill ask me certain questions like, well, would I know this? I have to go, all right, well, it's conceivable that you have a version of this, and I will allow you to make a check. And then my answer to you is, it sounds similar to this kind of thing that you learned, right? So that's that's where we get to, that's a lot of my retorts to you when you ask me the question is, well, you haven't specifically heard this, but it sounds a lot like this thing that you were told. So you can have a understanding of it without me being like, well, you wouldn't know that, so no, right?
Because
so
a lot of times when I'm asking you those questions, because there's tons of things that I could be like, do I know anything about fucking corporate governance or whatever, right? And I don't ask that.
Right.
But a lot of times it's like, it's basically the inference is, have I heard a story about this?
Yes.
Because they're of this oral tradition. Or a lot of times it's like, we see a creature and I'm like, does this look familiar to me in any ways? Which is really a question of like, would this or something similar be native to the island where I'm from or whatever, right? And so those questions are basically filling in minutia of your backstory that you would never otherwise write. And yeah, as a DM, you just have to decide right then and there when asked, like, is there any chance they've heard of this?
Oops.
There's no way Kill's ever heard of corporate governance.
No.
But there's like a weird, leathery, flying creature.
That's right.
He might be seen some like giant ass bats or something.
Yeah, of course.
Or maybe he's heard some stories at the trading post. Or whatever, so yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Well, cool. So far, nothing here is all that groundbreaking.
No, it really isn't. It's just an establishment of like previous things that were just sort of assumed for a long, long time.
I actually really, the more I think about it, I really like that critical hit rule. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like the critical hit rule a lot as well.
I don't care who you are. Nothing is. I can't imagine anyone else at the table having fun when the paladin goes up, rolls a nat 20, burns a bunch of smites, does like 150 damage. Kills the thing, nobody else got to go. Fucking cool.
Yeah, it's like,
I just don't know why that's fun.
Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree.
I'm on board.
That may be fun the first time you ever do it.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's like, I'd like to play the game now, please. You know what I mean? there are so many things with feats and like a whole bunch of other shit. A lot of the feats are actually revised.
There's a bunch of revised feats in there?
There's a shitload of revised feats in here.
I will take my time and read through those.
To give you just one example of this, so they're leaning more towards into the
backgrounds?
There you can customize backgrounds. They give you opportunities to do that too as well. But they're leaning more towards the reliance or the inclusion of proficiency modifiers in things that as a sort of base of good. Yeah, I think that's a really good thing. To give you an example,
it adds inherent scaling where it's often been missing.
Exactly. To give you an example, and the feats are leveled now.
Good.
So, like at the first,
it's like they watched our podcast.
It's like they watched our podcast. You can take first level. Like there are feats that you get at like the first level,
sure.
and
so
like
further
a lot
more like Artificer Infusions or
yes.
Eldritch Invocations.
Yes.
Yeah.
To give you an example, this is sort of the revised alert feat.
Okay.
If you don't know, the current alert feat is. If you take it, you can no longer be affected by the surprise condition, and you gain +5 to your initiative bonus.
Yep.
Really great feat. When I'm building random characters, I usually pick alert a lot, just because I love the idea of just being able to roll like a fucking +11 on my initiative, and just being like, yeah, I have like a 27. Oh yeah, 36 for your initiative. It's like, what the fuck? Like, it's hilarious. So now it is a first level feat. There is no prerequisite. It is not repeatable. So those are two sort of indicators in feats now where you can sort of...
Yeah, which we've never had repeatable feats before, so that's interesting.
Which is cool. The flavor, always on the lookout for danger. You gain the following benefits. Initiative proficiency. When you roll initiative, you can add your proficiency modifier to the roll. Wonderful. Yeah. Initiative swap. So this is something that we've developed before with the spell. Mm-hmm. Immediately after you roll initiative, you can swap your initiative with the initiative of one willing ally in the same combat. You can't make this swap if you or your ally is incapacitated.
Dude, that's so good.
That's awesome. That's such a I think that's a really, really wonderful version of this feat. I think that's so great.
Good. Yeah, it's obviously it's the bonus is much worse at low levels because you start at 5 before.
But again, though, low levels like that, if you're the DM and you're balancing properly, it should not feel bad, right? It should still feel percentage based, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I totally agree. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm a huge proponent of proficiency based scaling and feats.
But the thing is, so what a lot of people don't get, and it might not initially be intuitive, is that initiative really only matters in the first round.
Yeah.
And I think it matters mostly for people that are doing buffing, debuffing, and battlefield control.
Yep.
Granted, yes, if you go first and you do wicked damage, maybe you'll save, maybe you'll eliminate like one monster turn at the end of the fight. But like for the most part, if you're going up and you're casting slow as the first action of an encounter, that's way better than slow as the last action of the first round.
Yes.
So what this does is, both mechanically and flavor-wise, what this means is like, before, I would only ever consider, for me personally, alert on a character that's designed to be doing buffing, debuffing, battlefield control. I just don't care if I'm a barbarian, if I'm going first or last.
Yeah.
But now, if you're a fighter and you get all these extra feats and there's nothing that really you want, you can take alert and be like, yo, wizard,
get the fuck in there. Yeah.
Cast slow,
you
please.
need to get this shit in here. Yeah.
The utility of being able to not basically pick who goes first.
So good, dude.
Is awesome.
Yeah, it feels great.
Then you're at like low health and you have a healer in your party.
Yeah, dude.
Healer goes first.
Yeah. Or if you're like all set and you're like, all right, so like it would not be good to have if the healer randomly rolls like really well on initiative, and then it's like, well, fuck, like I don't really have much to do in the first turn. Like I can set up buffs, I guess, but like if you're good and you're like, fuck, like we're gonna get in there, we're gonna get really dirty. Healer, you're going last.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or you get that one party member who's at low HP and you just want to give them the chance to get the fuck out before the fight starts. That I love this because some people could argue that it's less powerful in a sense, but scaling is just the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And this gives so much more utility in a feature that I find this very encouraging.
For sure. I totally agree.
Yeah. Love it.
So that's sort of just an example. There are a few other revised feats that they have right now that list will grow in time. I do want to talk about some of the other things in the rules glossary.
Yeah, like core rules.
Yeah.
Stuff.
So they updated the incapacitated condition to be just more clear about like what the fuck it is. Because right now,
Instead of saying, see also this.
yeah.
See also this.
Right now, like, and it's still not clear like what you can and can't do technically. Like when I read the rules as written, sometimes to players about like the incapacitated condition, they're like, all right, well, can I still do this? And I'm like, well, you're not. Rules is intended, and you're not meant to, but technically, I guess, like it's this weird thing. But they've updated it to include, like it specifically says now, so incapacitated condition. While you are incapacitated, you experience the following effects: inactive, you can't take actions or reactions; no concentration, your concentration is broken; speechless, you cannot speak; surprised, if you are incapacitated when you roll initiative, you have disadvantage on the roll. So I think that's what now what the surprise condition is that once we start an initiative, if you are surprised, you have disadvantage on your roll.
Oh,
not that you cannot react in whatever bullshit. It's you simply have disadvantage on your initiative roll. And so it still gives you enough of like, if you're quick enough, if you're alert, if you have these things at your disposal, rather than simply saying you cannot be surprised, if you are quick enough and you have your wits about you, you can still bypass a surprise attack. Because, you know, like, it's no fun if just, like, every time a surprise attack happens, and then all I have to do as a DM go, no, you don't see this coming. Like, you know what I mean? Like, technically, you should be looking at passive perception, but even then, like, if I could literally just say, like, no, man, he's just, like, if I roll with a monster that is specifically good with stealth, like, it's gonna beat your fucking passive insight, you know what I mean? So, or passive perception. So,
you know what I'd love to see
Tell me.
initiative, since we're kind of talking about it?
Yeah.
It kind of bothers me that it's just dexterity. I'd love to see initiative be dexterity plus wisdom.
Well, there are many classes that support that. Many subclasses, rather, that support that.
No, I know. There are many subclasses that let you add bonuses.
Yeah.
But I just think it should always be dexterity plus wisdom.
Sure.
Because it's a combination of your fast twitch muscle fibers
makes
and
sense.
your ability to realize that the fight is about to start.
Yeah.
And I also think that would help druids and clerics and monks go sooner. Doesn't matter as much for monks, but spellcasters going sooner is always good.
Yeah.
And then, like, I don't know, just makes more sense to me.
Yeah. Let's talk about inspiration real quick.
Yeah.
So this is generally, in my game, it's very rare for me to do this. Mostly because for a while in our current campaign, for a while we had a bard in it, and it's just always felt weird to me to award inspiration as a dungeon master when you have a bard in your group who gives bardic inspiration, and they're two completely different things.
Yeah.
So it's like, it just feels weird for me to be like this, but we do have an interactive chat who can do that. It's not often that they do that, but like when we do that, it doesn't necessarily, it just kind of feels like, oh, chat gave me a bonus.
Sure.
It doesn't feel like I have inspiration, you know what I mean? Yes. So I can't speak for other dungeon masters who use this a lot. I personally don't, so it doesn't really affect me. But if I take the rules as written crits or auto successes, I now am told that they get inspiration. So like that's a thing that you could have been doing already to just sort of willy-nilly award that. But now it's a part of, you know, successfully critically succeeding into something. So for inspiration, when you have inspiration, you can expend it to give yourself advantage on a D20 test. You must decide to do so before rolling the die. I think that's always how it's been. Gaining inspiration, the main way. Okay, we know that. Whatever. That's basically just as like a rule of cool and then critically succeeding.
Yeah.
So only one at a time. You can never have more than one instance of inspiration. If something gives you inspiration and you already have it, you can give inspiration to a player character in your group who lacks it. So you can start spreading inspiration if you're just constantly fucking getting inspiration. That's not bad. I also kind of am just like, use your inspiration. Like, why are you hoarding it? I don't know.
Yeah.
That feels fine. Like, I guess that's something that they thought of. Like, well, what do we do if it happens? Well, you shouldn't get it stacked. Should they just be able to give it to someone else? Sure.
Yeah.
Like, it kind of just feels like a whatever.
I don't love it or hate it.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever about that.
It could be interesting if they want to leverage that new rule in like a subclass or a future class where it's sort of like this sort of new crit fishing where instead of just trying to do Nova damage, you're just like trying to keep everyone inspired.
Inspired? That's kind of cool.
I mean, anything that would inspire them to change the bard would be great. So,
dude, man, that's what I was going to say earlier when we were talking about inspiration. Like, they need to, if they're doing this, they need to fucking change the bard, and hopefully we will see that happen in the 2 years that this takes to come out. But like,
does it have any class or information?
Off the top of my head, in this in particular, I think it might just be core rule. Hold on.
So this is probably stuff out of like the presumed testing for like the new DM's guide and not the PHP.
That seems to be the case. Yes.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
I'm curious because a lot of the new classes, subclasses, and racial things I don't think they've introduced anything that references short rests in quite some time.
Yep.
So
I'm about to tell you.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's hear about it.
Yes. So before we do that, I do want to mention, because this is brought up a lot, and I think it's a weird thing with the grapple condition. They revised the grapple condition. Everything's the same, except whereas before you could basically just attack and your speed was just 0.
Yeah, right.
Now, and you could attack, you do everything normally. Now, you have disadvantage on attack rolls against any target other than the grappler.
Oh, that's cool.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
That was always a thing that was weird to me, that like the only bonus you get as a grappler is to reduce someone's speed to 0. It's just like, that's just a weird thing to waste your entire action on.
Like it. Anything that helps tanking actually be a viable strategy, I think is cool.
I agree. Okay, so now resting. So firstly, a long rest. Circling back around to inspiration, if you have inspiration before you take a long rest, you lose it after the long rest.
Get wrecked.
Just get bodied. A long rest, Unearthed Arcana 2022, is a period of extended downtime, at least 8 hours long, during which a creature sleeps for at least 6 hours and performs no more than 2 hours of light activity, such as reading, talking, eating, or standing watch. So that is how it's always been. That is the current rules now. Still the rules. There are some addendums to that. So benefits of the rest. At the end of a long rest, the creature regains all lost hit points. The creature also regains hit dice, up to half the creature's total number of them. So that's up to half.
Half, that's new.
Up to half, yes. So that is, it used to be you get all of them back.
Mm-hmm.
This is up to half. Round down. Minimum of 1. A creature cannot benefit from more than 1 long rest in a 24-hour period.
Okay.
And a creature must have at least 1 hit point at the start of the rest to gain its benefits. So you can no longer be at 0 incapacitated and then take a long rest and then be fine after 8 hours.
I don't think I've ever seen that happen. It
never comes up, but that was not a part of the rules. Yes.
I could see it happening, so I think that's a good clarification.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, this is a very interesting part. Interrupting the rest. If a long rest is interrupted by combat or by 1 hour of walking, casting spells, or similar activity. So I'm taking this comma usage not as 1 hour of walking, comma, 1 hour of casting spells. I'm taking it as casting spells in general. That's my initial read on it. It might entirely be possible that they really mean 1 hour of walking or 1 hour of casting spells or 1 hour of similar activity. That makes sense, especially with the similar activity line. Yeah, so that might also be the case. So if you're casting a spell for an hour, casting spells for an hour, then like you don't get a long rest, which makes sense. The rest confers no benefit and must be restarted. However, if the rest was at least 1 hour before the interruption, the creatures gain the benefits of a short rest.
So you still have to do the 8-hour rest, but if it's interrupted, you only get the short rest.
Correct.
So they've eliminated the short rest.
Essentially,
they've basically just said that like, if your long rest gets wrecked,
you get a short rest.
You can use your hit dice.
Right.
So what that means is that they're gonna have to rework Warlock for sure.
Yeah.
They're gonna have to rework any class that
relies on short rest
at all. So that's Warlock, Druid, Fighter. I'm sure a bunch more. Sure. Bard gets Bardic Inspirations back on a short rest for level 5. And I think that's good too.
Man.
The one that it massively overhauls is Warlock, and I'm because like you'll just get probably proficiency number of wild shapes per day or something like that. Yeah. But Warlock is going to have to be retooled, and so it'll be interesting to see how they do that. I think this is good ultimately. Short rests are just annoying to have to like. Every fight ends and you immediately want to take a short rest. Unless you don't get anything, then you're like, oh, we have to take a short rest.
Yes.
So I think this is good.
So now they've also, the last thing in the sort of like base like rules thing that they've changed very heavily.
Okay.
They truncated the spell lists.
Oh.
So there are no longer class-based spell lists.
Oh.
There are 3 spell lists, and classes are a spell casting type.
Okay.
So there is the arcane spell list, there is the divine spell list,
Okay.
and there's the primal spell list.
Just got a little bit. I literally.
You got a little,
I got a little.
yeah, a little excited up
When I
there.
heard the primal spell list.
Oh yeah, baby.
First of all, before I know anything about this,
Okay.
I think this is both potentially terrible and potentially great.
Yep.
Because it makes no goddamn sense the way they've been doing it now,
I
where
agree.
arcane and divine are completely meaningless.
Yes.
And all the spell lists are just like the whim of the designers. There's no
Yes.
rhyme or reason to any of them. However, my fear is that all arcane spellcasters and all divine spellcasters will just feel the same. This is having not heard what, the implementation. But I don't want my druid and my cleric to have the same access to all the same spells.
I agree.
I don't want my bard and my wizard and my sorcerer to have the exact, and warlock maybe, whatever it is, to have the exact same spell list. So unless, again, we're gonna have to wait and see what the PHB says. If all of the classes are spellcaster types, but then they also get that stuff where it's like you automatically have these spells prepared based on your subclass.
Yep.
And it's really interesting and transformative, then maybe it'll be fine. So I don't want to hit the panic button. But so I'm simultaneously excited and worried by this.
So I'm gonna reference Veerds' chat message right now because I was gonna bring this up because I think this is a good indication as to what they probably are changing about the warlock class.
Yeah.
Veerd says, interestingly, Eldritch Blast is not on any of these lists.
Yeah.
I think that for me, as just as a reader, that would be an indication to me that that is likely going to be a class-specific ability now, rather than a spell that you can take.
It always should have been.
And I completely agree to that. I think that making it a spell just sort of like, again, like it was my argument in the Warlock episode, part of my argument in the Bard episode, your argument as well, that like I just would have liked to see a lot of things that are treated as spells or using the spell slot like mechanic in the game just be something else, right? Like there are many things that you could just make a different part of the game instead of having to put it into like spell slots and stuff, and Eldritch Blast just makes a lot of sense for that.
Well, I have a feeling that probably what'll happen is, again, does it actually have the spell list?
So we have the cantrip lists and then some first levels right now. So
I'll just say before, because I do want to hear this for sure.
yeah.
I'll just say that my guess is that they'll still treat Eldritch Blast like a spell. It'll just say, as a warlock, you gain a unique cantrip. It's called Eldritch Blast.
it's probably going to be that.
And so the only reason why, and it was always a unique spell to the warlock list anyway. The thing that made it,
No, you could take it as a bard.
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure you could. Either you could take it as there was one other class that you could take it as. I don't remember what it is, but at some point you could take Eldritch Blast as something else. I don't remember. I feel like that was the case.
Why? Okay, it's possible.
That's just off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure that was the case.
Okay. Well, anyway, I mean, there's definitely feats.
There was feats for
You
sure.
can always do Eldritch Initiate.
Yeah.
Not Eldritch Initiate, Magic Initiate.
Yeah.
But anyway, the main thing that it was just a cantrip tax on the warlock, who only got, I think, 2 anyway.
Yeah.
2 or 3. And so, like, when classes get so few cantrips and they're required to take 1, it's just annoying.
Yeah. So the I'm sure you could guess, the arcane spell list, at least for the cantrip, and no, the arcane spell list is just way longer than everything else.
Are there any new spells on this list?
Not that I can see. I think that they're saving that for future releases and stuff. So hopefully that will be the case, because I would love to see some new, more interesting spells or
Can
just
I say one
modifiers.
other random ass thing about Eldritch Blast that I'm just going to rant about?
Go for it.
20 seconds. We'll talk about Fighter eventually. I fucking hate the Eldritch Knight. It's so fucking stupid.
Yeah, Eldritch Knight sucks.
I know people say it's powerful. I think it's the worst dog shit design I've ever seen.
It's dumb.
It doesn't get the Necromancy spell list, and it doesn't get Eldritch Blast.
It's like,
What about
it
it is Eldritch?
Yeah.
Just call it like Spell Sword.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, dude. I don't know.
It gets invocation spells.
Yeah.
There's nothing creepy about it. It's a knight that can cast Fireball.
Yep, that's correct.
Why is it called Eldritch Blast? It's fucking stupid.
It's dumb.
Anyway.
Mean.
That's a preview for when Sal and I talk about our most and least favorite subclasses.
That's right, baby.
After we finish our series.
I love it.
Yeah, also its fucking feature where it gets to turn its 3 or 4 attacks into a cantrip and an attack. Cool story, bro. It's fucking
Yeah.
dope.
Veered says it sounds so cool. Eldritch Knight sounds so cool in theory, but
Yeah. ...
Yeah. So true, dude.
My only feature as a fighter is getting to make a bunch of attacks. I sure love to turn those into cantrips.
That's right, baby. That
Catch
dude
them.
dick. Fucking.
Anyway.
Yeah,
That's
so
not gonna do anything, but-
so ridiculous. So here's an example. We're just gonna go through the cantrips right now, just because there's a fuckload of other things, and we don't have too much time left.
Yeah.
So the arcane spell cantrips are Acid Splash, Blade Ward, Chill Touch, Dancing Lights, Fire Bolt, Friends, Light, Mage Hand, Mending, Message, Minor Illusion, Poison Spray, Prestidigitation, Ray of Frost, Shocking Grasp, True Strike, and Vicious Mockery. So this is very clearly from the base rules, right? Which makes sense. Divine Spell cantrip list. Guidance, Light, Resistance, Sacred Flame, Spare the Dying, Thaumaturgy.
Not Toll the Dead.
Not Toll the Dead.
Interesting. That strikes me as kind of a semi-iconic, like cleric cantrip.
Toll the Dead is Xanathar's.
Oh, this is just players.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, this is just basic rules. Yes.
Yeah, I always forget that
Xanathar's is not just like the base game.
Which is honestly really good. Like praise for Xanathar's, because like it's some good shit, dude.
Well, it's just,
feels like it should be
I
base.
started playing 5e after Xanathar's was already out.
Yeah.
So it's just always, and you've never been like, I know when you go to Adventure League or whatever, you can only use like one core book plus one other book.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to pick and choose, but it's just always felt like.
Yeah, it's always been that.
Anyway.
And then primal spells for your cantrips.
Yeah.
Druidcraft, Guidance. I find that very interesting.
So guidance is on both spell lists. Because it was on the.
It is on Divine.
Okay.
It is on Guidance. Yeah, Divine. Guidance is on both. I just thought that was interesting that it was on Primal. Mending, Message, which was also on Arcane. Yep. Poison Spray, also on Arcane. Produce Flame.
Okay.
So far, only Druidcraft and Produce Flame are unique. Resistance, which was on
that was on the Divine.
Divine as well. Shillelagh, which makes sense. That's a unique one. Spare the Dying, which was also on Divine, and then Thorn Whip. So Primal really only gets like a few unique cantrips to themselves. But that's just saying. I mean, there just aren't as many cantrips to go around.
So they've. My immediate concern is not a problem. Right. They've separated the druid from the divine, from the cleric, and so ranger will get primal spells. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's cool.
Yeah, I think this is just an easier way to like have referential, stuff.
Was Vicious Mockery on the arcane list?
It was right? Only arcane, yes.
Yeah, so that means your wizard can take Vicious Mockery, or your sorcerer can take Vicious Mockery.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which is again like it's a weird thing.
Kind of a bummer.
Well, if you're leaving off Eldritch Blast, like I don't understand why you would just why you wouldn't leave off Vicious Mockery and just treat it the same. Like, you know what I mean? Like why is another class besides Bard getting Vicious Mockery? Like, I don't really understand. I mean, I guess if you're an adept enough wizard or sorcerer or whatever, sure, I get it, but like it just feels like that should just be baked into the Bard class and not like a thing where again, it just goes back to, this just doesn't feel like it should just be a spell. Like, treat it as like a feature or some other magical ability, you know what I mean?
I mean, it's Vicious Mockery is obviously not baked into Bard the way Eldritch Blast is baked into Warlock.
Not even close.
But yeah, it does. You know, you and I think are the same in that we're both in favor of more diversification between classes.
Yeah.
So that they feel more unique, and this does feel like a step in the wrong direction in that sense. On the other hand, dude, it is like, I always wonder about spell design in the way that it feels kind of arbitrary, like what classes get what spells. And also I wonder, and this is not really the same thing, but I wonder how they decide like what components each spell requires. Why some are, verbal, some are somatic, whatever.
Yeah.
Obviously costly materials are used to balance spells, but so I understand why they did this.
Sure.
And I do think it makes some sense. It'll be really interesting to see how they divide up, leveled spells and were there any other? Did anyone notice any other spells that were like missing from that list?
Off the top of my head, I do not recall. I'm gonna give this a way more in-depth read through. I just wanted to give our first impressions for this episode of the podcast because I thought it would be very interesting. We do have a first-time chatter, Matt. If you want to read that, it's a little far away from me.
Oh yeah, first-time chatter. Valixion. Produce flame. Ah yes, the best way to level up. Have Charmander use Ember in Viridian Forest, eradicating the infinite Caterpie Metapod population, and skipping from level 5 to level 100.
Solid.
Dude, nothing gets me harder than fighting Metapods.
That's right, baby. Literally, just them. They're just using Harden the whole time. What a good joke, Matt. I'm proud of you. Nice. Well, y'all, that's gonna do it for episode 10 of.
Can I ask you one more thing?
Oh, hit me with it, brother.
So, did you happen to watch the? Wizards Presents or whatever it was?
No.
Are you familiar with it?
Yeah. I mean, where they like sit down with like.
Yeah, it's like their. It's kind of like their E3 or whatever.
Yeah.
Their mini E3. Mm-hmm. So I saw it was maybe like a 10 to 12 minute kind of deal, sort of documentary that they made talking about D&D 1. Actually.
Oh, cool. Nice.
So I hadn't seen any of this, so I'm glad that you brought it up. I had seen that, and just to kind of get your feelings on it. They basically, the feelings that they were trying to, I think, convey with D&D 1 is that they feel really good about where 5e is.
Cool.
You know, right or wrong. They feel really good about where 5e is, and they don't want to, they've basically done away with even the idea of editions. So they're suggesting that D&D 1 is not like a 6th edition. We shouldn't even be thinking about it as the next edition. It just is. It's an undying entity that will live on until the end of time is 1D.
All right.
And so basically they feel so good about where 5e is as a core system. Obviously they'll be making some changes, like short rest going away is a significant change.
Yeah.
But like we're probably not going to see major changes to things like the action economy, to things like how initiative works and that.
So they're going to be treating it kind of like patch updates, essentially, where they're going to be like, hey, like we've been getting this kind of feedback for X amount of times. We're going to change this or whatever.
Yeah. The other thing that they said is that like all of the core books and adventure modules for 5e are going to remain useful. Obviously, like the core books are going to be obsolete.
Sure.
But things like Tasha's will work.
Yeah.
Things like whatever Storm King's Thunder will still work. So they've tried to convey the message that like, hey, like if you've bought books, don't worry, they're still going to be good. And yeah, so the mentality seems to be that like they're really happy with things, they just want to do some tweaking. Of course, like you and I having some strong feelings about the way that certain classes are designed, that's a little bit of a bummer. But like Warlock is obviously going to get updated, so it'll be interesting to see what they do there. But the other big announcement is what they're trying to do with like D&D Beyond integration. And so what they're doing is, and this is going to be a ways out, but they showed some, and I believe there's a beta available to use similar to this.
Okay.
Is what they're basically trying to do is use D&D as the sort of the character sheet bit like they are now, D&D Beyond, I'm sorry. But they're also going to be producing their own virtual tabletop.
Oh, okay.
That when you, a couple things. Is one, when you buy a core book, a physical book, you'll also get the virtual book.
Oh, okay. So, dude, oh my fucking god,
Yes.
that used to make me, dude. When I found that out, when I first like got D&D Beyond, and I had all these hardcovers and stuff, and I was like, oh my god, thankfully, finally, like a place to. I figured you could just put in your fucking like barcode or something, and it would just put it in.
No.
When I found out you had to buy them again. And like a dumb fucking sucker, I did it. I bought all of them again just so I could have them in a digital space. And man, are they gonna refund me my fucking money again?
So that'll go away. So any future books you buy, you'll get both physical and the virtual versions.
All right, well that's awesome. That makes me very happy.
Virtual only version. I'm not sure. Like you might be able to buy just the virtual, but if that's the case,
I have to check I have to check myself on that though, because it's the same type of argument that people have against free education, where they're like, "Well, I had to pay for my education. Why do these fucking people get it for free?" I have to check myself and be like, "No." People deserve to not have to pay for so many fucking things. There's a better way. It's okay.
But the other thing that's really cool is so they're going to have their own virtual tabletop again. That's not going to look like a video game. It still looks like minis.
Cool.
It still looks like the Dwarven Forge or whatever is your jam.
I think, man, that's such a good idea, dude.
What's cool is like, okay, so let's say you buy the new adventure module that they come with. When you buy the module, you'll get, I don't know if you'll put in your you scan a QR code or like whatever, but basically your virtual tabletop will come, then
give you access to like the set pieces.
It'll be preloaded in. Yeah, that's perfect. That's so good, dude.
So basically, the way
this is what I've been talking. This is what I talked about like before we started playing on Wednesday when we were talking about that stuff. I was like, well, I wish they would integrate in D&D Beyond like an actual play. Yes. That's so. If they're doing that, then that is everything that I've ever wanted with that product.
Yeah. So I think that's all really rad. The beta footage that they were showing looks really cool. Again, it still looks like minis. It's still, so it's just basically so that like if you're playing with your friends across the globe, it gives you as close to a tabletop experience as possible. That's the idea anyway. Obviously, this is going to be years in development, but I mean, between that and the stuff that you were telling me, I find the vast majority of that encouraging. I wish they were doing more with the classes, but I'm very encouraged.
To reference what is their
Velixion.
Velixion. Sorry, I'm a little further away.
That's my favorite
EV Evolution. Yeah. But no, they say I for one prefer new additions over patches. Already so confusing with the retconning of stats in recent. Yeah, and I agree to that in some sense. I really don't like the process of retconning things. It's just like, dude, just like make something new. But I also understand where they're coming from with because I was actually. It's actually a great one-to-one with Pokemon. Rather than, I would have loved to see a version of like Sword and Shield, which is where I thought they were going with this, with having these essentially expansion packs that were coming out on the Switch. I would have loved to have seen them put like a lot of time into developing the core base of the game, and then just releasing expansion packs that cost like $15 like per pack or whatever, rather than like going to like fucking Gen 9 or like all this stuff. And it's like, that's the formula for Pokemon. They're not going to change it. I understand that. But there's a part of me where it's just like, dude, just like get a really good core and then just keep putting out like expansions on that thing. Like, you don't need to like do like this is just for me. You don't need to do a full rehaul of it all the time. Just get it right. Which is like, that's the problem though. This is an entity that's been around since the fucking,
it's been around 50 years.
Yeah, 50 years, dude. So it's like, that's kind of an unrealistic expectation for me to set because it's been around for so long. So I understand the just being like, well, just make 6E, like, you know what I mean? Like, just do like revamp it. And it's like, I get that, but also I kind of like the idea of just having a base thing. And now we've established, all right, we really like 5E. We're not going to really be breaking the mold on like what the real core is from now on, because we like where we are. We think it's simple enough. Most people's feedback says and suggests that it is like a good place. So now we're just going to tweak it to the point where like we're going to listen, hopefully more so than they have ever had before, and just go about like making your minor things like here and there to reflect what the community
I think
wants.
there's a couple of interesting things about this. Is one, like, let's not get it twisted. Like, this is the most popular D&D's ever been.
Ever, yeah.
And so they're going to be really careful with any significant changes that they make to alienate players.
Yeah.
So I understand where they're like, oh my God, people love 5e. We're all making lots of money.
Yeah.
Let's not fuck it up.
No, yeah, we got to keep it, keep it kosher, yeah.
But to a large degree, we're going to have to kind of reserve judgment until we see what comes out in the PHB, because based on what I've seen here, they're actually making more changes than I thought that they might.
Yeah.
And so, like, if they make significant changes to multiple classes, they print new spells, which they've said they're going to do.
Yep.
They, blah, blah, blah. I could easily see them working in things like we've done a lot of complaining on this channel about like how tools don't do anything.
I think they're revamping. I think that was a big part of the Unearthed Arcana, and there were some other things that I just wanted to get into because they were more talked about, even though we care more about that kind of stuff. Yeah. So maybe not next episode, because I do want to finish our series, but we're definitely going to be talking about this more. And I'm doing a deep dive in the Unearthed Arcana to like really get a feel of what's going to be going on.
So if they balance feats, which sounds like they're doing,
yeah.
If they add a bunch of new, unique, cool spells, if they make tools do things, if they make some needed changes to some of the classes, like, in the end, this could not feel like a new addition, but it could be like everything we've all ever wanted.
Yeah, which I hope they do.
Or it could be like, oh shit, they didn't fix anything, and now we're stuck with it forever.
Yeah, it's just dumpster fire.
My biggest thing that is a little bit like, how are they going to do that? Is like, the implication of what they were saying is that like this is D&D from now on. Right.
Yeah.
And so what, like, are we going to have 50 subclasses for every class in 10 years? Like, what are you going to be doing?
Yeah,
what are you going to be designing?
Yeah.
Right. So, in a way, maybe every year we're going to get a new a new full class from WotC that's actually been balanced. You know, maybe we'll get like an actual sorry, maybe we'll get like an actual alchemist class that feels like an alchemist.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get like the scion they've been pretending to make for, not pretending, but like teasing for 5 years. Maybe like, if they, in a way, drawing a line in the sand and being like, no, we're not overhauling, we're not starting from scratch. This is it. Might mean we're going to get more of those things because now they're committed to the system.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we all know what power creep is. We watch cartoons. We play games.
Yep.
And like, what is the year 10 subclass look like compared to the PHP subclass?
That's right. Yep.
So those are the things that is going to be hard for them to keep balance. But like, if they do it well, it could be awesome.
Hey man, hire us. Wizards of the Coast, bro. Fucking put us in the fucking war room. Get me in a one-on-one with Jeremy Crawford, dude.
There you go.
I'll sit down. We'll figure it the fuck out, man. I'll tell you what the people really want.
Yeah. So I'll just give them a quick nut tap and we'll save everybody.
Easy squeezy, lemon peasy. You know what I'm saying? But we do have to get out of here. So thank you very much for joining us. Happy birthday once again to you, buddy. Yeah, I don't think we mentioned this at the top of the episode, but it's Matt's birthday today. So if you're watching this on a different day, fuck you! I just get like super angry. Why? How could you do that? No, of course not. We appreciate you watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your birthday, my friend.
This was a wonderful birthday surprise.
Yeah, it was good stuff. I figured you would enjoy it. Just to wrap things up, we are a little dicey. We play a live game of Dungeons and Dragons on twitch.tv/a-little-dicey DND every Wednesday night. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is live. We play it right here in this studio. It looks a little bit different than this. I am the Dungeon Master here. Matt is one of our wonderful players. And we do the podcast live as well every Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time here on this channel. It's more than likely that you're probably going to be watching this live if you're one of our usual members of our community. If you are, thank you very much here and now. Fandom, Veerds, and shouts out to Velixion. I don't know if you've been watching for a while or if you just stumbled upon us now, but we're super happy to have you. Michaela is our moderator. They are right now in chat at Hello Diddy. Michaela, if you want to just sort of link our Discord, maybe for Velixion, if you're not a part of our Discord, we have a wonderful Discord community where you can be voting on what class we're going to be talking about next. Obviously, we're going to be doing the monk next in our rating our class
let us know
series.
In the Discord if you join. Let us know how does one evolve into, how do I get my Eevee to become a Velixion?
Yeah, we want to know how to become Velixions for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I will, if you guys are interested, I'll post the link to the Unearthed Arcana 2022 for you to see it yourselves. I'll probably do that a little later.
Oh, yeah.
And we can chat about some of the stuff that might be in there or some stuff that you might want to see. So
maybe they'll fix the monk.
We'll see. We'll see. But join us next time here next Saturday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be talking about the monk. See us next on this channel on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Myself and Michaela are going to be talking about episode 31 of The Great Nelidian Crown. And then join us on Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for episode 32 of The Great Nelidian Crown. I'm very excited about that. Keep in mind, we're going to be having another special guest relatively soon, so keep a lookout for that and any announcements pertaining to that hopefully soon. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you. I'll see you on Tuesday, and Matt and I will see you both on Wednesday, 6 p.m. So
See ya.
Peace out. Hell yeah, brother.